For over a century, the tricolour flag of France waved over West Africa, not as a friend, but as a master. Behind smiles and handshakes were deals signed in shadows, empires built on gold, uranium, and silence. But in the heart of the Sahel, something has changed. A wind is blowing from Ouagadougou, fierce, bold, and unforgiving. His name is Captain Ibrahim Traoré, young, fearless, and burning with the spirit of Sankara. To the west, he is a threat. To Africa, he is hope. And to France, he is the man they cannot control. This is not just a story about power, it's about fear. The fear of losing centuries of dominance to a captain who speaks with fire in his voice and Africa in his heart. Welcome to Pan-African Hub. Today, we reveal why France fears Traoré, and why that fear grows with every passing day as he tears down the French Empire. France's empire in Africa, the hidden machine. To understand why France fears Captain Traoré, we must first understand what it stands to lose. Because the French Empire did not disappear, it simply changed its costume. After Africa's so-called independence in the 1960s, France built something more enduring than colonial rule. It built a system, a hidden machine, engineered to extract wealth, manipulate politics, and keep former colonies in check. This machine had many faces. The CFA franc, still printed in France, kept 14 African nations tied to Parisian financial policy. French corporations maintained control over gold mines, oil fields, and uranium, especially in Burkina Faso and Niger, where French company Orano powered France's nuclear grid with African uranium, while local villages stayed in the dark. Then there were the military bases. Troops stationed in Dakar, Abidjan, and N'Djamena under the guise of security partnerships. France's Operation Barkhane was sold as a mission to fight terrorism, but it became a symbol of broken promises and lingering control. And finally, there was the elite class, trained in Paris, fluent in French diplomacy, rewarded for loyalty and punished for resistance. Any African leader who stepped out of line, like Modibo Keïta or Thomas Sankara, was silenced either by coups or worse. This was Françafrique, not just a policy, but a quiet empire built on dependency. And for decades, it worked, until men like Ibrahim Traoré appeared. The rise of the captain. Why Traoré changed the game? He didn't come from a palace. He came from the people. In 2022, when Captain Ibrahim Traoré emerged from the barracks of Burkina Faso, many in the West barely noticed. He was young, too young, they thought, a temporary figure, another soldier in a parade of coups across West Africa. But what they failed to see was the fire behind his eyes. Traoré didn't speak the language of appeasement. He didn't ask for foreign support or IMF approval. Instead, he talked about sovereignty, about dignity, about the return of African control over African lands. He called out France directly, exposing the parasitic agreements that allowed foreign forces to operate freely in the Sahel, while locals died in the thousands from terror attacks, poverty, and neglect. He closed the French military base in Camboinsen, ordered the expulsion of French troops and intelligence services, cut ties with the French embassy, and declared that Burkina Faso would now look to its neighbors, not to Paris, for security, trade, and identity. He spoke openly about Thomas Sankara, calling him a martyr and a father. But unlike others who use Sankara's name as decoration, Traoré moved in Sankara's footsteps, cutting his own salary, wearing military fatigues, and touring the countryside to meet farmers, youth, and soldiers face to face. In a matter of months, he transformed from an obscure artillery officer into a revolutionary symbol. A lion, they now call him, not just in Burkina Faso, but across the entire continent. And that is precisely why France fears him. Because Traoré is not just leading a country, he is waking up a generation. A Françafrique breaks down, the Sahel sets itself. Free. For decades, Françafrique operated like a silent engine. It needed no headlines, no drama, only quiet compliance. But that engine has now stalled, and it's stalled in the Sahel. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, three nations once treated like chess pieces on a French board, have flipped the table. One by one, they expelled French troops. One by one, they cancelled colonial-era military agreements. One by one, they turned their backs on dependency. It began in Bamako, when Mali's transitional leader, Colonel Assimi Goïta, told France, "Your war is not our war." Then in Niamey, General Abdourahmane Chiani echoed the same. "We are no longer your outpost." And in Ouagadougou, Traoré's voice roared like thunder. "No foreign army will save us. We will save ourselves." In response, France panicked. Economic sanctions followed. Accusations of Russian interference flooded Western media. Aid was frozen. Ambassadors were withdrawn. But the Sahel didn't blink. Instead, it got stronger. In September 2023, the three nations came together to form the Alliance of Sahel States, a mutual defense pact to protect their sovereignty and rebuild their security architecture without foreign oversight. Military collaboration turned into diplomatic unity. Then came talk of a common currency, a shared flag, a new anthem. Françafrique isn't just breaking, it's being buried. And at the center of this storm is a man France once dismissed as temporary. Now they call him unpredictable, dangerous, a threat to Western interests. But the people of the Sahel, they call him a liberator. Traoré is no longer fighting a military war. He's fighting a spiritual one, a war for the very soul of Africa. The tools of fear? How France is trying to stop the revolution. Empires rarely fall quietly, and France, desperate to hold on to its influence, is deploying every tool in its arsenal to stop the Sahel revolution. The first weapon is media warfare. French and Western outlets paint Traoré and the Sahel leaders as authoritarian, Russian puppets, or dangerous nationalists. Stories flood international airwaves, filled with fear-mongering headlines designed to scare investors and isolate these leaders from global support. Then come the economic levers. France, backed by ECOWAS and the EU, has pushed for harsh sanctions. Borders closed, banking systems disrupted, humanitarian aid suspended. All of it designed to squeeze the people so they turn against their own governments. But instead of panic, something unexpected happened. The people stood stronger. France also deployed its diplomatic influence, pressuring neighboring nations to reject the Sahel bloc. Whispers in corridors, phone calls behind closed doors, offers made and threats delivered. But the Sahel leaders have stopped picking up the phone. They've stopped asking for permission. And finally, there are darker moves, covert destabilization. Leaked intelligence reports speak of foreign operatives, suspicious rebel resurgences, and attempts to sow ethnic division. It's the old playbook. When control slips, create chaos. When unity grows, fracture it from within. But this time, it's not working. The Sahel populations have learned from the past. They've seen what happened to Lumumba, Sankara, and Gaddafi. This generation is more alert, more connected, and more determined. They know that freedom has enemies, and they know who those enemies are. France's fear is not just about losing influence, it's about losing control over the narrative. Because when young Africans start asking the right questions, the empire begins to crumble. The legacy begins: Traoré, Sankara, and the rebirth of Africa. In the heart of Ouagadougou, a statue of Thomas Sankara stands tall, bronze, proud, unbroken. For years, it was a relic, a memory of what could have been. But today, it feels alive again. Because in Captain Ibrahim Traoré, many see not a replica, but a continuation. Like Sankara, Traoré speaks of self-reliance, of dignity, of a new African identity forged not by mimicry of the West, but by the dreams of our own ancestors. He has rekindled the idea that Pan-Africanism is not just a theory, it's a mission. Sankara planted seeds. Traoré is watering them. This new Sahel generation does not bow. It does not wait for validation from Paris, Washington, or Brussels. It is forging its own alliances with fellow African nations, with the East, and most importantly, with its own people. Under Traoré's leadership, Burkina Faso is not simply resisting, it is reimagining. It is building new schools, new defense industries, new symbols, and now a new anthem, the Sahel Benken. It's not just about rejecting France, it's about rewriting what it means to be African in the 21st century. And yes, France fears him because Traoré does not just threaten their military presence, he threatens their myth. The myth that Africa cannot lead itself, the myth that the empire must endure. But that myth is collapsing, and as it does, a new story is rising. One of courage, resistance, and rebirth. From Sankara to Traoré, the flame is still burning, and this time, Africa is ready to carry it to the end. France tried to control him. They tried to pressure him. They tried to silence him. But Captain Ibrahim Traoré is not just resisting the empire. He is dismantling it, brick by brick, border by border, mind by mind. This is more than a rebellion. It is a new doctrine of power rising from the Sahel, forged by youth, fueled by sovereignty, and focused on a future where Africa answers to no one but itself. Burkina Faso is not looking back, and neither is Traoré. This is not just his fight. This is our story, our generation, our revolution. You've been watching Pan-African Hub. If you believe it's time to reclaim Africa's destiny, like, comment, and subscribe. And hit the bell to never miss the next wave of resistance. The empire is trembling, and this is just the beginning.